Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Intuition Activation Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Rachel, a spiritual medium and intuitive coach, and I'm so excited that you're here to join me for this intuitive development journey. Guys, I'm really excited to do another solo episode. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done an episode all by myself. And I have a very specific topic, and I want to kind of get back to our roots here and really dial back into strengthening each of our clairs. Now, I know that I haven't mentioned any of the clairs or done a specific episode on strengthening specific intuitive abilities since the very beginning of this podcast. And I did do one episode on each of the clairs, or at least I think I did most of them, or at least the main ones, and how to tell if that's your strongest clair and how to sort of develop and lean into each one of those. So if you want to dive in deeper into each of the clairs and how to strengthen each one, or how to know if that one is yours, definitely I recommend going back and listening to some of those episodes that are right at the very beginning, one of the first, few episodes from this podcast. But today's episode is really inspired by the students who I've been working with in our intuition activation community. So our private Facebook community that I just launched at the top of this year. And, one of the things that some of the participants or the members have been asking me is, how do I strengthen the clair that is not my strong suit, right? Let's say you're predominantly clairvoyant, but you also want to hear, and you also want to know, and you also want to have feelings, or other way around, maybe you only hear and you want to be able to see. And so I really wanted to do a full episode on some things you can do to help you strengthen the clair that may not be your predominant one, the one that shows up easiest for you. So we're definitely going to dive into all of that today, and I'm going to give you some tips and some tricks for how to just strengthen each one and the ways that you can go about doing it. And then also be sure to stick around to the end of this episode, because as promised in any of these solo episodes, I'm going to continue to offer these little intuitive development exercises. So the last solo episode I did, I believe I offered you guys a little bit of a clairvoyance strengthening exercise. Today we're going to do a Clairaudience strengthening exercise. So definitely stick around to the end of this episode to give yourself a chance to practice and get immediate confirmation. There's going to be a way for you to see if you got it right or got it wrong at the end of this episode, so make sure that you stick around. But before we dive into this episode, I am going to really, really, really plug into this the intuition activation community, our private Facebook group. Guys, it is getting so much fun in there, and I just feel like you need to come and join us. You need to come and join us, because this is the place where, if you're ready to develop your intuitive abilities, you are essentially getting private coaching from me, or small group coaching from me. Every week I'm meeting up in there almost every week, and we are really actually having classes. We are working on practicing and strengthening each skill. This last month, we have really, really been diving into receiving very clear messages through Clairsentience, so physical sensations. And we've been getting immediate confirmation because we've been practicing on each other, on the other people in the group. And people are able to kind of come in with their questions. So this is a great way to get some answers to the questions you want from your spirit guides. The students have been coming in, bringing their questions of, the things that they want to ask their guides, and letting the other students ask the guides and get the answers. And so not only are you getting to practice your intuitive development skills, and you're really kind of learning how to strengthen and flex those muscles, but you're also getting some clarity around your own life. I mean, guys, there's nothing better than this. Come and join us in here. And if you're listening to this episode on the day that it comes out, we will have already had a guest workshop with Sonia, who was on last week's episode. And she was talking about how we sort of come about kind of thinking about creating our own spiritual business, and doing a whole workshop around that, and using your intuitive abilities to help you get started on that. We are going to have Indra Kelly come in and do a workshop. There's so many fun things. We're also talking about starting a little spiritual book club in there. So all of the beautiful books that I have used to read, that I have read along my way to help me in my spiritual awakening journey, we're going to be reading some books together and kind of meeting up and chatting about those books and the concepts in there. There's resources in there, there's meditations in there. And the most important part is the friendships that are forming, guys. It is so beautiful. It is so beautiful to feel seen and heard and connected to people who are on the same intuitive development journey as you. So I'm going to stop plugging it and stop pushing so hard, but just know if this feels even a little bit like something that you want to try, then go ahead and come and join us, guys. It's not a big financial stressor. It's $36 a month. And if you buy my Meet Your Spirit Guides course, you get 1 month free in the community. So then you get 2 for 1, right? You get to learn a little bit more about developing each of your clairs. And then as you're going along the way, you can come and join the community, test it out, see if it's for you without any extra without anything extra that you have to try or pay. So definitely come and join us. Come and see if it's the right fit for you. Link in the show notes, the Intuition Activation Community. But if you buy the Meet Your Spirit Guides course, then you'll get 1 month free access into the community. And then you can just give it a try and see if it works out for you. The community has been growing, and the people that are in there, guys, they're just such beautiful souls, and they're listeners of this podcast, and just people like you who just want to develop their intuitive abilities and want some help and some community around it. So come and join us. I can't wait to see you in there. So that being said, let's dive into this week's episode. How do we actually strengthen the Clair that is not your strong suit? How do we strengthen that Clair? So I'm going to start with maybe the obvious one, which is that it's the best thing to do is to figure out, or it's very helpful to know, which Clair actually is your strongest one. Now, there's a couple of ways of figuring this out. I do have a quiz on my website, so you could definitely head over to my website, jessicarachel.co, and take the quiz. And the quiz can definitely help you figure out which of the Clairs is maybe your strongest one. But I'm going to underline here that there are 4 main Clairs that are most likely your strongest one. These are sort of the ones that kind of are more common than some of the other ones. There are 8, I believe there are 8 Clairs in total. They're all associated with each of the senses, right? So we have 5 senses. And so whether you can see or touch or smell or taste, right? Those are all ways that your spirit guides are communicating with you. But then there's also that they can communicate with us through other things like our emotions, right? Clair empath would be one of those. And so, but at the end of the day, I want you to think of it this way. Your spirit guides are trying to get messages across to you. They're trying to have conversations with you in a way that you are going to best understand it. Right? So this will kind of really easily translate to the kind of learner that you are, or the way that you best receive and process information. So think about the type of learner that you are. When you're learning something new, do you need to see it in order to understand it? Do you need someone to explain it to you in order to understand it? Do you need to be able to move your body in order to process the information, or actually try it in order to understand it? That's going to be your biggest clue as to which might be your strongest Clair. How is it that you are most often processing or easily processing information? So for me, I'm a very visual person. I don't understand it unless I see it. I cannot read audiobooks. I can't listen to audiobooks. I have to read the book. If I don't see the words, it doesn't process for me. I don't absorb the information. My mind will go off in a million other directions if you're just speaking to me. But if there's a visual in front of me, it's going to capture my attention. I'm going to understand what's going on. And so that is why my spirit guides predominantly try to communicate to me through clairvoyance, through visuals, because that's the easiest way for me to understand. So take a minute to sort of think about how is it that I process information most easily, right? A lot of people share with me their frustration in not having the clairvoyance that I do, right? That they want to be able to see the way that I do, and they just don't understand why their guides don't communicate with them in that way. But if you do better in having something be explained to you, right, and have it be spoken to you, then chances are you're probably claircognizant or clairaudient, right? And it needs to come in knowings and thoughts and words for you to actually understand it. So take a minute to sort of think about, how do you best process information? And it goes a little bit deeper than that, because I only mentioned three here, right? I only mentioned being like, do you receive information as a learner through seeing, hearing, or doing? Because those are technically, and this is my teacher college hat coming on, right? Those are the three types of learners, if you will: a visual learner, an auditory learner, or a kinesthetic learner, right? But I like to say that we are receiving information in so many other ways, and there's so many other layers to this, right? So think about, when you're having a conversation with somebody, what are all of the other subtle messages that are going on in that conversation? You are not just hearing the words that the person is sharing with you. Are you also picking up on visual cues, such as their facial expressions? Do you notice that you're paying more attention to those than the words that are coming out of their mouth? Are you picking up on the emotions that they are feeling, rather than, what they're actually saying they are feeling? Maybe they're saying that they're fine, but you know that they're not, because you can sense the subtle energy or the emotion underneath. That might mean that you're more of a Clair empath, right? You can feel those emotions. When somebody's speaking to you, or when you're having a conversation, right? Are you picking up a little bit more on the underlying messages, right? The subliminal messages that are coming through. They may be saying one thing, but you know in your heart that they mean something else, right? That there's really something underneath the surface. There's a root issue here that they've not actually vocalized. Well, if you have this knowing about them that they're not even saying, right? And that's not what's coming through at face value, then maybe you're claircognizant, right? So pay attention to how you participate in a conversation with another person, because the way that you receive messages when you're connecting with other people is going to be very similar to the way that you receive messages from spirit. So pay attention to those things. Pay attention to, where is your mind going when you are talking and conversing with another person? What other subtle messages are you picking up on or paying more attention to, that are skewing or perhaps swaying your perception of what went on in any given situation? So that's really kind of, I want you to think of that as the basis of starting to clue in on what is your strongest Clair, right? And I do want to add here, I didn't mention Clairtangents, and we are going to get into that as well. Clairtangents being able to receive messages through physical touch, right? So think about, when you're having a conversation with someone, are you also someone who maybe feels like you need to place your hand on their arm or their shoulder, right? Maybe you want to always initiate or end that conversation with a hug, right? Or a handshake. And does that handshake tell you a whole lot about where that person is at that moment, right? Then you might be clairtangent as well. So I really want you to think about that for a moment. It's always important to kind of pick out what your strongest Clair is, because from there, you're going to be able to layer on to the Clair that you have the strongest. So you should actually try to strengthen your Clair that is your predominant Clair first. Your strongest one, you should actually work on heightening before you think about even adding on the other layers of the other Clairs. Because if you're really good at one, right, the other ones will come in. They will, and you can work on those and strengthen those. But even if you just have one and you work on strengthening that one, you're going to get a lot clearer of a message. So in all of the tips that I'm going to give in the rest of this episode, focus a little bit on the one that's actually your strongest one, and use some of these exercises that I'm going to mention to help strengthen your strongest Clair first. And then you're going to layer on those other pieces of the conversation with the other ones as well. The other thing I do want to mention here is that while we can access all of the Clairs, and I don't want to persuade you or move you or dissuade you rather from doing that, right? From connecting with all of the senses. But I do want to say that, especially when we're starting out, try your very best not to overwhelm yourself, and see if you can just pick up on or work on your main one plus maybe one or two more, so that in total, maybe you're receiving messages in about 2 to 3 different ways. This is the best way to kind of do it when you're starting out, in order to not get overwhelmed or not to get too much that you have to process in the same time. And the reason I mention this is, think about That spirit is very much an energy being. And so if you're asking to reactivate and strengthen, let's say you clairvoyance is your strongest, like mine is, and then you're wanting to layer on clairaudience so you can hear messages as well. And then you add clairsentience to that as well. That's a lot of information being processed, right? You're seeing something, you're hearing something, and you're feeling something, and you're having to sort of figure out what all of those things mean at once. So take it slow, take it easy, do one at a time and layer them on one at a time. Try not to strengthen and reactivate too many clairs all at once. Get used to how you receive each of the clairs and what those meanings mean for you one at a time. And when you feel comfortable and satisfied in your way of interpreting each of that one particular clair, then I would encourage you to move on to the next. But don't try to reactivate and strengthen all of them at once. It's going to be too much too soon. You're going to get overwhelmed or you're going to get nothing. So really, really go slowly in this process. Start with your strongest clair, really strengthen that one, and then layer on one more clair at a time. Okay. So the first thing that you have to do in order to strengthen any of the clairs, whether it's your strongest one or another one that you're wanting to add on to your practice, the very first thing that you have to do is start by actually asking your guides to help you with this. So you're going to do the same thing that you would do in any time, in any a scenario where you're wanting to connect with your guides. I'm going to always encourage you to start with the same process. Do something at the beginning of your practice to get out of your head and into your body, whether that is a meditation, a walk, a few deep breaths, some breath work, right? Something that you have to do to sort of get out of your head and into your body. I'm going to say, let's do a little meditation or at least 5 deep breaths. And then you want to call in your spirit guides, right? Spirits as a light. Are you here with me? Spirit guides, come and join me in this guided meditation. Spirit guides, angels, all of the beings of light who support me, come and join me in this moment. So make sure you're doing at least those 2 things first. If you are, I always encourage to ask for protection, especially when you're starting out, if that is a fear of yours. If you have fear of calling in things that are nefarious, and I do want to underline that's never happened to me. And I don't really think that it's really part of my, that's a whole other thing, but it doesn't really have to be something you have to be worried about, but it doesn't hurt to call in for protection, especially if that's a fear for you. You're not going to open yourself up to calling in and allowing yourself to receive everything if you have even a little shred of fear that you might call in something negative. So just create a blanket insurance policy and ask Archangel Michael to come through and protect you as you're channeling. So you've done those 3 things. Now you're going to ask your guides, and here's the exact wording that I want you to use. Spirit guides, please reactivate and strengthen my, and then pick a clair or pick a gift. So please reactivate and strengthen my seeing gifts, or please reactivate and strengthen my hearing gifts, or please reactivate and strengthen my claircognizance, right? Pick the clair that you're wanting to work on and ask them to reactivate and strengthen it. Okay. Have your guides work with you as you do this. When I was just starting out on my spiritual journey, as I said, clairvoyance came in very easily for me. I was seeing things so clearly and so easily, but I often found like I was playing charades because I didn't know exactly what the images meant. And it took some time for me to realize that most of the time those images were quite literal. And so the images they were showing actually meant what they were saying. But at first, a lot of us get tripped up in believing that perhaps it's metaphorical and there's some interpretation here that's at play. And so I found myself doing a lot of guessing, doing a lot of like, what does this mean? I see a flower. Does that mean that something new is growing, right? Or is it that there's an actual flower that I need to be looking for? Is this a sign, right? So I really, really, really wanted to strengthen and reactivate my clairaudience. I really felt like if I could get a visual and then get some wording around what that visual meant, I would have a much clearer understanding of what the guide was trying to tell me. So that's what I did. I went out in the forest one day. We had this beautiful river, kind of like a ravine near the back of our house. And I would go and walk along the hiking trail there, go find a hidden spot beside the river. And I would do a little meditation. And I would call my guides in and I would ask them to reactivate and strengthen. And I would say my seeing and hearing gifts. Now, the next thing you want to do in that moment is I want you to picture a volume dial in your mind. So think about like a little dial on the radio that you would use to turn up the volume. Okay. Now, picturing that volume dial allows you to enable yourself to visualize that strength or that ability, that Clair, is being turned up to full strength. Picture that happening, right? Envision that happening. Envision your guide turning that knob up. Okay. That's going to sort of give you the reassurance, or the intention is going to be sort of amplified as you do that. Okay. And then what you're going to do, in regardless of whichever Clair you're strengthening, you have to start practicing in that moment. So if you're trying, for example, I was trying to strengthen and reactivate my Clairaudience, well, then I was going to start to talk to my guides. I was going to ask them a question and see what messages came through, and ask them to turn up the volume and turn it up again and turn it up again until I could hear a sound or a word or a phrase that went along with the visual images that I was seeing. So, for example, at the very beginning of my journey, I was just connecting with my guides and asking them the same question all over and over and over again. If I'm not supposed to be a teacher, what am I supposed to be doing? Right. So I think I would say something like, give me a sign that I'm not supposed to be a teacher. What would that sign be? And so then a sign would come through, and I would see in my mind's eye an owl, for example. And again, I always thought that the owl was some sort of metaphor for something, right? Was it knowledge? Was it wisdom? What does an owl represent in spirit totems and whatever? And then I would have my guide, I would literally in that moment turn up the volume dial, right? See in my mind the volume being turned up and saying, Spirit guide, can you please speak to me? Reactivate and strengthen my clairaudience. What do you mean by the owl that I'm seeing? And then suddenly I would hear it. You will see an owl when you know you're on the right path. Okay, that makes sense, right? And so my guide spoke to me and said, when you see an owl, you will know you're on the right path. Okay. And so then I knew that anytime I saw an owl, this is what it meant. And so they were being literal. It wasn't the meaning or the metaphorical meaning behind an owl. It was literally like, look for owls. That's us guiding you, that you're on the right path. Now, I will talk a little bit more when I dive into each of the Clairs, because Clairaudience at first, when you're first starting it, doesn't always sound like sentences. It did for me for a while. No, see, for me, when I first channeled my past grandfather, he was speaking to me in sentences. With guides, though, however, sometimes you can just hear one word. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But yeah, so I just want you to start with asking your guide to reactivate and strengthen each of the clairs that you're trying to turn up the volume on, and then visualize them turning up the volume. Then ask your guides a question and let the message come through of initially in the one that's strongest for you, and then ask them to turn it up so you can hear or see or feel whatever is the one that you're wanting to strengthen. So now I'm going to give you some exercises to help you strengthen some of the more common clairs, the ones that I recommend that you might want to have in your arsenal, that I recommend you strengthening, and how you can use it to your advantage or use exercises to help strengthen those. So I'm going to go through all of the clairs, or at least the 4 main clairs, and share with you some other ways that you can actually strengthen them besides doing the first thing that I just mentioned, which is practicing with your actual guide and asking them to turn up the volume and then asking them questions. So here are some other things you can do. So the first one I want to talk about is, I'm going to talk about 2 together, which is Clairsentience and Clairtangency. So Clairsentience being receiving physical sensations from your guide, so getting physical feelings in your body as means of messages from your spirit guides. And then Clairtangence being having to receive, or having your physical hands, your body touching somebody else or something, and receiving messages by means of actually holding on to something. Okay, so they're 2 different things, right? Clairsentience is that your body is receiving signals, you're receiving physical sensations in your own body. Clairtangence is you placing your hands on someone or something and receiving information about that person or thing because you're holding on to it. Okay, but the reason I put those 2 together is because we can strengthen them in the same way most of the time. So the first exercise I want to give you for Clairsentience, and I have mentioned this one before, I believe. Actually, I don't know if I have. But either way, I'm calling it the lean forward and lean backward method. Okay, so your body will literally lean forward if the answer is yes or something is aligned for you, and it will lean backwards if something is not aligned for you. So you can go ahead and ask your guides a yes or no question, right? A question that can be answered of should I do something, yes or no? And your body will lean forward, literally just be moved forward or be moved backwards, whether it's aligned for you or not. So if it is aligned, your body will move forward. If it's not aligned, your body will move back. Okay. Now you can use this as a way of developing your clairtangence as well, coupled with your clairsentience as a way of asking for very specific things if they're aligned for your body or not. So you can use this to decide if this is a food that's going to agree with your body. So if it's the right food to be eating in that moment. You can do this, and this is used actually quite often in what's it called, homeopathic or naturopathic medicinal methods. So sometimes they'll do something called muscle testing, right? You think of holding a homeopathic remedy or a naturopathic kind of tincture or remedy in your hand and seeing, does it make your body sway forward or sway back? If it makes it sway forward, the medicine is going to help you. If it makes your body sway back, it's not. Another way this is used sort of in the homeopathic sense is they'll do muscle testing. So that would look like holding the medicine in your non-dominant hand and placing it against your heart, and then holding your other arm out and having somebody push down on that other arm with you trying to create resistance. And so if the other individual is able to very easily move your arm up and down, even though you're trying to resist, then that medicine is not suited to your body. And your body is literally responding to that and telling you it's not going to work for you. But if you hold the medicine in your non-dominant hand and hold it against your heart, and you are very easily able to resist somebody from pushing your arm down, then that medicine is going to be helpful for you. So you can use your body, your physical body is always telling you whether something is working for you or working against you. But you can also use this for food. So if you are, this is a really great tool for intuitive eating as well. And so I will often do this, especially having such a very sensitive body, although honestly, since pregnancy, it's gotten a lot better. And since getting very into meditation and healing a lot of anxiety, my food sensitivities have since dissipated. And I will definitely do a whole episode on my thoughts around that. But I definitely used to do this a lot of if I didn't know if a food was going to agree with my digestive system or not, I would hold the food in my hands and see, and I would literally ask the food, is this for me or is this not going to work for me? Is my body going to agree with this or not? And in holding the food, I would just close my eyes and I would see how it felt in my physical body. Now, this is more of a clear, you can either do the lean forward or lean back. It'll do that for you. It'll make your body lean forward or lean back. Or what started to happen for me is that the exact reaction that my body was going to have to it, I would be able to see in advance just by holding the food. So let's say, for example, I sometimes do okay with sugar and I sometimes really don't. And it really kind of depends on the time of day and how stressed I am and whatever. So if I'm thinking about having something that has a little bit of sugar in it, I will often do this. I will hold on to the item that I'm thinking about consuming, and I'll just see what sensations show up in my body. Now, if it's going to feel good for me, I'm going to actually feel like my mind gets clearer. I'm going to feel my shoulders relax. And I'm just going to feel like I can breathe a little easier and I'm going to feel good. I'm going to feel enlightened or lighter. And if it's not going to do well with me, I'm actually going to feel in my body the sensation of like a little bit of pain kind of around my stomach area, like my solar plexus just below my ribs there. It's going to feel a little bit like a stomach ache. Or I'll start to feel kind of like tingling or heat in my cheeks, which is a reaction I often get if the sugar isn't agreeing with me. My cheeks will turn hot. So if I haven't even eaten the food yet, but I'm just holding it, I can feel my body responding to the food and telling me, is this for me or is this not for me? This is a great way for strengthening your clairsentience and receiving information of whether something is good, is for your highest good or not. A lot of people also use the lean forward and lean back method when they're buying crystals for themselves. So if you go into a crystal shop, and those can be very overwhelming because there's so many crystals, right? It's so much to have to read all of the information about what the crystals are for and how they're going to serve you. The best thing to do is kind of look at the table of crystals, see which one catches your eye and you're drawn to. That's the first way to go. Then pick up the crystal and do the same thing. Hold it in your non-dominant hand. Either place it against your heart or just hold it. and notice. Ask the crystal itself, is this meant for me or not? Does it make your body sway forward? Then yes, it's for you. Does it make your body sway back? Then no, it's not for you. So this is a really great exercise. And the thing about this exercise, the lean forward or the lean back, is that anytime you're needing some guidance from your guides and it's an issue that you're just so in your head about, you really, really can't think clearly about it. You can't see clearly about it. You have a very distinct outcome that you want, or perhaps, you're just too anxious about it to really, really kind of channel it for yourself, which can happen often, right? I always say that it's actually easier to channel for others because we can be more objective than we can for ourselves. Using this is the best go-to exercise for whether when you need to make a decision, but you're just too involved in the outcome, okay? Because your body will always talk. Your body is always talking to you, and your guides are always sharing messages through your physical body. And there's no sort of processing through your mind in this. Either your body responds positively or negatively, and it doesn't have to be filtered through your thoughts, right? So this is the best exercise to have when you just need a good, quick, easy answer without putting too much thought into it. And I use this exercise several times a day, right? Is something aligned for me? Is it not? Okay. So I really recommend using this as a means of strengthening your clairsentience and your clairtangence. One other thing I will say is if you're wanting to work on your clairtangent, so maybe you're an energy healer. If you are an energy healer, you've been drawn to energy healing work, clairtangence is definitely one of your strongest clairs. Okay. Clairtangence meaning, again, when you place your hands on someone or something, you start to receive information about the other person. Or about the thing that you are holding or the object you are holding. Or you can hold on to an object that belongs to a person and you can receive information about that person by holding on to an object that belongs to them, like a piece of jewelry, for example. Okay. The best way to strengthen your clairtangence is to place your hands on somebody, right? Call in the guides. Start imagining healing energy flowing through you, through your hands and into that individual. But then also start to imagine that energy going back from the person and into your hands. Okay. And as the energy is moving back and forth between the two of you, what messages come to mind, right? What knowings do you suddenly have? Okay. What do you suddenly just know about this person as you're receiving that information? More importantly, that you can add the clairsentience layer to this. When you place your hands on somebody, do you start to receive physical sensations in your own body? Okay. Maybe you are receiving a physical sensation that's actually translating to the other person. So, for example, I could hold somebody else's hand, right? Or place my hands on their heart, for example, and maybe start to get a headache. It's not me who has the headache. Then you have to be brave enough to ask the person, what's going on with your head? Are you experiencing a headache? And then if they confirm for you, yeah, my head's been hurting all morning. Ah, okay. I'm receiving information about the other person. Okay. Your body will often talk. And this is a great way to receive information about another person, is that you'll be able to read it in your own body when you place your hands on them. So give it a try. Place your hands on someone else and start to send that energy back and forth and see if physical sensations start to pop up in your own body, and ask that individual, does it mean anything to them? And you're going to see, you're going to get confirmation so easily and so quickly. So those are my tips for strengthening your clairsentience and your clairtangent. So using the lean forward and the lean back, trying it with different objects and different things that you may use on your body or on your person. And then try using your clairtangence by either placing your hand on someone or a belonging of theirs, and see what messages, kind of knowings come through, and or what physical sensations pop up in your own body. Okay. The very last exercise that I will give for this is that you can go one step further with the yes or no, or the lean forward and lean back. You can also ask your guides to show you what yes feels like in your body and what no feels like in your body. Okay. So instead of leaning your body forward or leaning your body back, you might get tingling in your forehead for a yes, and you feeling like your shoulders are shrugging, or butterflies in your stomach for a no. So you can go ahead and ask your guides, spirit guides, show me what yes feels like in my body and see what sensation shows up in your body. This could also be tingling or heat in your palms. Some people felt like someone was tickling their knees, right? Like it could be really anything. Maybe tingling on the top of your head. So what does yes feel like in my body? And then you could ask, and then you would say to your guides, thank you, I feel you. And ask them, what does no feel like in my body? Now, no can either be the absence of the yes feeling. So if you asked for yes first, then you ask for no, and the yes sensation goes away, but no new sensation comes up, then for you, no is no feeling at all. Okay. However, you could also get a new sensation for no. And the new sensation could be, something maybe that doesn't feel as nice, right? So it could be butterflies in your tummy, or your shoulders curling in, or shriveling up, or a heart closing kind of sensation, or heat in your hands or cold in your hands when there was heat before, right? So it could be something that's a little less pleasant. And then you could start to ask your guides a yes or no question and see, does the yes sensation pop up or does the no sensation pop up? Now, one other thing I do want to say about all of this with the clairsentience and clairtangence is if you try doing all of these exercises that I just mentioned, and you feel like you get absolutely nothing, okay? You just feel like you get no physical sensations in your body doesn't lean forward or back, it doesn't respond to food or crystals or medicine. When you place your hands on someone, you get absolutely nothing. My guess is, okay, that then your strong suit is actually claircognizance, okay? Now, I don't know why this is, but it seems to be that most commonly people whose predominant clair is claircognizance seem to have very little or very weak clairsentience. I don't know why this is. I don't know why it works that way. But if you are feeling like I just get nothing in my body, no physical sensations whatsoever, then chances are your predominant clair is claircognizance. Okay. So that's just a big clue for you. Okay. And how your body works and how you receive messages. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit later about how to strengthen your claircognizance. And I do want to say, take heart. Okay. If it does mean that claircognizance is your strongest clair, that's a good thing, right? It's not a bad thing, right? There's nothing wrong with having one clair stronger than the others. People who have claircognizance for some reason are very, very jealous of the ones who have the others. And I think it's just a case of the grass is always greener. But claircognizance is a very, very strong clair to have. So don't be upset if you don't have a strong clairsentience. It just means that your claircognizance might be off the charts. Okay. Claircognizance, again, meaning clear knowing. So we're going to touch on that one at the end because there are very specific things you need to do to strengthen your claircognizance. And I would argue that if claircognizance is not your strongest one, it can be helpful to want to add that layer in at the end, right? So if your strongest one is either clairsentience, clairvoyance, or clairaudience, you're going to want to strengthen all of those before you strengthen your claircognizance. But if claircognizance is your strongest, then you're going to use all these other exercises to try and strengthen the other ones. Okay. I hope that wasn't too confusing. But yes, so I'm going to move on to clairvoyance. So if clairvoyance is not your strong suit, but you want to strengthen it, you want to be able to see messages from your guides. And it seems like a lot of people who feel like this isn't their strongest one, this is the first one they really want to see. Or really want to develop. And I don't blame you because it's cool for sure. But I also think I need you to really understand with your clairvoyance that there is a misconceived perception of what clairvoyance is supposed to look like. So I'm going to burst your bubble here and say that clairvoyance is not so special. It's not this big, crazy visual that's outside of you that feels like it's coming to you in a different way, or like you're going to see an apparition in front of you. People have this expectation that it's going to feel like this really out of body, magical experience where they're going to see something appear in front of them. Guys, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. Clairvoyance is almost indistinguishable from your own imagination. So if at any point in your life, which I would argue you probably have felt this at some point in your life, have ever imagined a beautiful scenery or image or anything and seen a beautiful picture in your thoughts, in your mind, that's what clairvoyance looks like. It doesn't look like anything different. Now, the question is, how do you know it's a channeled message as opposed to just your own thoughts and imaginations? And the only way you can distinguish it is, well, there's two ways to distinguish it, but the biggest way to distinguish it is context. Did you call your guides in that moment? If you called your guides in and you are trying to connect and communicate with them in that moment, then any visual that shows up in your imagination from that point onward is a channeled message, a channeled visualization. So, a lot of the times when people tell me that they don't have clairvoyance or that they cannot see their guides, it's because they didn't realize that they were already doing it, right? They thought it was going to be something different, and it's not. It's something you've probably been doing your whole life and didn't know to call it that. Okay. It looks exactly like your imagination. Now, there are definitely some ways that we can strengthen this, and there are some ways that we can activate it even stronger or recognize it even stronger. Now, for me, and I've been told that this is not true for many people, so I'm just offering this in case it is true for you. For me, I do have one other way of distinguishing my clairvoyant gift from just my own personal imagination. And the other distinction that I have besides context is that the image that I will see in my head looks a whole lot more like a hologram. So it feels very shimmery and sparkly. Like the images in my head are made of sparkly metallic light. Versus in my own imagination, I can paint pictures and they can just look like beautiful, I guess you would say like beautiful illustrations, kind of like watercolor or images you would see in a picture book. But when I'm channeling and I'm seeing images coming from my guides, it often feels like this really shimmery, sparkly light. And again, I should underline that for many of my students, that wasn't the case. It was exactly the same as their imagination, and that's okay too. But I just wanted to offer that in case that helps somebody out there. Now, how do we go about strengthening this? So there's a couple of things that you can do. The thing that I really like to do is I like to think of painting a picture in my mind. I like to think of projecting or placing a movie screen at the front of my mind and watching the movie play out in my mind. I am a really imaginative individual. So, in the context of calling in my guides, I will then start to paint a picture. Right? Trust that whatever you're imagining in the moment, the picture you're creating, the movie that's appearing before you is channeled from your guides because you asked your guides to join you in that moment. We're not so separate from our spirit guides that we can't sort of co-create images with them. And that actually often is what we are doing, right? And this is why I will get one image to mean one thing and someone else will get a different image to mean the same thing, right? So, for example, if I am trying to, if I am asking my guide, I'm trying to think of a good example. If I am asking my guide, what should I do today? Okay. And they show me an image of sitting in a nice, beautiful window and reading a book, but then they show somebody else curling up in their bed, right? What can you gather from those two images that the spirit guide is maybe asking the person to do, right? They're probably asking the person to do something quiet and relax that day, get some rest, right? And so maybe for me, I imagine reading a book by a window as a beautiful form of rest, but somebody else sees taking a nap as a beautiful form of rest. But at the end of the day, the message is the same. You need to rest, right? So we're going to get different images based on how we perceive that word, right? The image that we would connect with that word, if you will. Okay. So think about creating a movie in your mind and seeing that play out in your mind. Kind of create it in your own mind. Think of it like you're co-creating images with your guides. Okay. Now, some other things that you can do to start to strengthen your clairvoyance is you can also try practicing to see the auras of the people around you. So think about like if you go in front of a person, take a moment. You can close your eyes, you can just look and look at sort of the outline that you may start to see around that person. Of course, you may want to take a few deep breaths and center yourself. But if you were in your own mind to imagine a color sitting just on the surface of that person's body, what color do you picture? right? What color do you see? And what does that color mean for you? What does it say about the person? Then try saying it out loud, right? So, for example, if I look at a person and I see all around them a beautiful kind of serene turquoise light, right? Well, to me, I'm going to say that to me that feels like a person who maybe is really grounded and maybe a little bit airy and very soothing in their energy and maybe very full of a lot of creative energy. I don't know. I'm making this up as I go along. That's not actually what turquoise means. I'm just kind of making it up. But whatever turquoise means for me, and I'm gonna just start to say what turquoise means and see if that person resonates with what you're saying. I'm gonna give a better example because that was not a good example. Let's say I see a beautiful golden light around them. What do I feel when I feel that golden light, when I see the gold all around them? Well, it feels warm, it feels soothing, it feels welcoming, it feels relaxing. It feels like I want to tell them all my secrets, right? It feels nurturing, right? And and if I'm looking at a person and I see a gold all around them, and then that's sort of the energy that I would associate with that gold, I would then say it to that person, say, does that resonate with you? Do you feel like you tend to be a very nurturing, loving individual? Do you feel like people are always telling you all their secrets or their whole life story every time they meet you? They go, "Oh my God, yeah, you nailed me." Right? That's right. You nailed it. Sorry. Then, that's a good confirmation that maybe the aura you created in your mind that you imagined, if you will, was actually their aura, right? So see it like a big game of imagination. Okay. That's the best way to strengthen your clairvoyance. Two other things you can do, okay, to help strengthen your clairvoyance. One is call in your guides and try to visualize what your spirit guide looks like. Paint a picture of them. What do you imagine your spirit guide looks like in your head? If you were to have to draw them on a piece of paper, what would they look like? What color is their hair? What clothing are they wearing? What color is their aura? Are they male or female? What does their hair look like? Right? All of the things, get all of the details, get very specific on those details. And then add another layer to this. And again, that's kind of the only thing that's hard about this is that the only way you're going to get confirmation on whether or not that's how they look is getting someone else to call in your guides and see if they see the same thing. However, what you can do is do this for someone else, right? And then have them ask a question that can be answered with yes or no. Do you imagine the guide nodding their head yes or shaking their head no in answering that yes or no question for somebody else? Okay. Um, this one is such a great, quick, and easy win, right? So if a friend is asking me, do I go to this party tonight? And I call in their guides and I just see them jumping up and down and shaking their head yes, like so profusely, then I'm going to know that the answer for that person is yes. The guide didn't have to say anything. I'm seeing them nodding their head. Okay. Or if the guide is shaking their head no, furiously shaking their head no, then I know the answer is no for them. Okay. So give that a try too. Calling in their guides, envisioning what the guide looks like, and more importantly, ask them a yes or no question. And do you see a nod yes or a head shake no? And then the last thing you can do to strengthen your clairvoyance, actually, there's two more things. One is astral traveling. I did a whole episode on astral traveling, so I'm not going to really do a lot of explanation on how to do that in this episode. But just a quick refresher of astral traveling being that you are actually projecting yourself into another energetic space or frequency. So you maybe are traveling to the realm where spirit guides live, or to an angelic realm, or to another physical space on the earth, and being able to actually see in your mind everything that's going on in that space. This is used a lot of people do use this. I think it can also be called psychic projection or astral projection. So projecting your energy body into another physical space and being able to see it in your mind. I do a whole episode on how to do that in my astral traveling episode. So definitely go back and listen to that one if you are curious about astral traveling. But I do find that astral traveling is one of the best ways to practice and strengthen your clairvoyance because it is a very visual exercise, a very visual activity. You're trying to project yourself and put yourself in another place. So you have to see what's going on in that place and in your mind and visualize everything that's going on in that other place. So astral traveling is really, really a good one. And then the last thing you can do, and these are you can sort of like play those little games, right? So you probably see these a lot on Instagram and TikTok of other mediums kind of posting, right? These little games of like maybe you pick a card and you try, hold the card in your hand without looking at it and with your eyes closed and, taking a few deep breaths and getting centered and grounded and trying to see in your mind's eye which card you were actually holding. You could do this with markers and see which color you're actually holding without actually seeing it, right? All of those little games are great ways of trying to strengthen your clairvoyance and seeing in your mind's eye the color that you're holding in your physical hand. So you can definitely give some of those exercises and activities a try as well. So that's all I have to share for strengthening your clairvoyance. I hope it was helpful. This one is the one that's probably the hardest for me to help people strengthen because it comes so naturally to me that I haven't had to work too hard on strengthening it. But I'm hoping some of these will resonate with some of you and help you kind of strengthen it a little bit. So let me know if these ones help, and otherwise I'll do some more research on other ways to strengthen it. But I do find that many of my students come in claiming that they don't have clairvoyance, and I end up proving to them that they had it all along. And that's usually the case, is most of the clairs you do have all along. Again, when we're having a conversation, we are experiencing a conversation with all of the with all of our senses. And so even when we're talking to our guides, we are experiencing them in all of our senses. It's more just kind of getting in tune with what that feels like for you and trusting that you were already doing it and that it's not something so extra special outside of you. It was always within you. Okay, so I want to move on to clairaudience. Clairaudience, again, being hearing, right? Hearing messages from your guides, being able to hear your guides speak to you. I have found personally that clairaudience has possibly been the most helpful in receiving messages from my guides. Again, when I'm trying to interpret images, it can be hard to know whether I should be taking those images literally or metaphorically, and if I'm supposed to be interpreting them or just seeing them at face value. And it was really helpful for me to work on strengthening my clairaudience to hear a word associated with that image so I could put the two puzzle pieces together and understand the message in a better way. So clairaudience is always and most often going to sound like a voice inside your own head. Okay. It's not different from the way that your thoughts feel, except that there is one very clear distinction. Okay. Your thoughts are always going to be at the front of your head. Think of them kind of like a ticker tape that you see on the bottom of the news, one thought after the other, going at a rapid pace, always moving and always near the front of your mind. When a message is coming from your guides, it's going to feel slow and calm and grounded. And it's going to feel like it's coming from the back of your head or behind your ears. It's also possibly going to feel like you only hear one word and then it disappears, right? And it's almost like as soon as you process that you heard it, you're like, did I hear what I think I just heard? It feels like it disappeared. Of course, as you learn to strengthen your clairaudience, it comes in phrases and then sentences and then full-on conversations. Over time, as I have learned to strengthen my clairaudience, I definitely am able now to hear different, very distinguished voices depending on what the guide comes in as. So if the guide looks like a male, like a very strong male, I will hear a deep billowing voice, versus if it's like a little fairy, I might hear a little high-pitched female voice, right? So over time, definitely as you learn to strengthen your clairaudiences, you will hear different voices that are separate from your own. But that has taken years for me. So I do want to say that at first, and even for the first few years for me, clairaudience sounded like my own voice inside my own head, same way that my thoughts do, except that it was more grounded and it was at the back of my head. Okay. So I want you to start by strengthening it by recognizing that it does sound like your own voice and it's not like something outside of you. Okay. And even now, I should say that for me, even when I do hear my own voices, it does feel like I'm imagining voices in my head, right? It's still in my head. I'm not hearing something externally. Okay. So know that. Now, how do we strengthen this? I want you to go ahead and ask your guides a question. So do all of the things I said about calling in your guides, right? Meditating, doing some deep breath, taking on a few deep breaths, calling your guides in, asking them a question. Trust the thought that comes to mind after you ask the question. Okay. It's going to sound like your own thought. So trust the thought that comes to mind. Trust that one word that comes through. Trust that one phrase that comes through. This one is a lot more about trusting the thought that comes up. It can be so hard to distinguish your thoughts from your channeled messages. But again, within the context of asking your guides, if you just called your guides in and then a grounded, a very grounded, calm voice at the back of your head comes through, you didn't think that. That was your guide coming through. Okay, so go and trust that. Now you can go ahead and strengthen this even further. Again, ask your guide to reactivate and strengthen it. Ask them to turn up the volume. And then you can go ahead and ask your guide a yes or no question. Ask a question that doesn't mean that much to you, right? So you're not going to ask something that feels like a life-changing decision. But should I have this pizza for dinner? See if you hear yes or no at the back of your head, right? Do you hear it, right? If you've called in your guide in and you see them nodding their head and you hear a yes, well, now you've got a double yes, right? So see if you hear that yes or no. Sometimes it's helpful to hear just that one word. I'm going to argue with this one. Again, it's helpful to try this on somebody else, okay? If it's a question about yourself, there's going to be the answer that you want to hear or you think you should hear, right? If it's for somebody else and it means nothing to you, you're going to hear the messages more clearly. So ask the question for somebody else. Okay. Should my sister go to the party tonight? Yes or no? Okay. Then I want you to go further and ask your guide to speak to you. Ask them a question and ask for more details, right? Then I want you to get creative. I want you to imagine what the voice of your spirit guide might sound like inside your head. Try and move it away from sounding like your own voice. If you know, or you imagine rather, that your spirit guide looks like a sweet little old grandmother, what would that voice sound like inside your head? Right? Do you hear a sweet, soothing, nurturing, loving female voice? Start to move your imagination in that way. Get creative with it. Again, we are co-creating with our guides. Spirit lives within us, right? And so those messages that are coming in through us and to us are not outside of us. We get to co-create the messages with them. It's just recognizing that they're there, right? So start to create those voices with them. And that's really all I have for strengthening your clairaudience. I hope that was helpful. I do want to move on to claircognizance because I do want to say that claircognizance, also known as clear knowing, is probably the hardest clair to distinguish. Okay, hardest to recognize. So claircognizance, literally translating to clear knowing, you don't know how you know something. You didn't see it, you didn't hear it, you didn't feel it. You just know, right? I just know something and I don't know how I know. Now, people who are predominantly claircognizant, these messages are probably coming through their body all the time. And so they find it very hard to distinguish it from their own thoughts. And that's kind of the point. People who are predominantly claircognizant are channeling like 85% of the time, as long as they're not living in the past or the future, right? They're not being anxious or depressed, but they're actually living in the present moment. Most of the thoughts that are coming through their mind are channeled thoughts, which is why it's so hard to distinguish. So if you are claircognizant, again, take heart. You're actually probably just channeling all of the time and didn't realize it. But if this is one that you're wanting to strengthen, I recommend using claircognizance as a way of putting together all of the clues that you received from all of the other clairs. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you are channeling, you called in your guide and you're asking them a question, and you get a visual, and then you hear a word, and then you feel a sensation. Instead of trying to analyze what those three things mean for you, you're going to try and use a deep inner knowing, right? You're just going to know what those mean. Instead of getting into your head and trying to interpret the deeper meanings behind all of those three things, you somehow know that those three things put together means this particular message. So let me give an example. Let's say I'm channeling for somebody and I'm asking, I get this one a lot actually. So I'm going to go with this one. Let's say the guide is giving me some advice for somebody's health. Okay. And I suddenly get the image of spinach. Okay. And I hear the word iron, and I feel the sensation tired. Okay. Now, I could try and analyze each of these three things and think, okay, either the guide is trying to tell them they need more leafy greens and, they're saying strength. So maybe the greens are going to make them stronger and they're feeling tired. So they need more leafy greens, right? I could try to analyze it that way. But if I actually put those three things together and just take a second and just have a knowing, my guide is actually trying to tell me that this individual is low in iron. Okay. Because I just know, okay. And, leafy greens tend to be high in iron, right? They're making me feel tired when I'm low in iron. I'm tired, right? And I'm needing some strength. Okay. So, right. An iron gives us strength, right? So, again, if I try to analyze and get into my mind about what do those three things mean separately, I'm actually going to end up interpreting incorrectly. This is where claircognizance comes really in handy, is that then I just have a knowing of what those three images put together is really trying to say. And I'm putting it together into an actual message of your guide is saying you're low in iron, right? And then I might suggest maybe I might suggest, like, are you feeling a little bit tired? Maybe try eating some more leafy greens to get that iron, right? Like those things come up. But usually by then, once I've said it, maybe another image will come up and the guide will show me, like, actually, this person needs to take a supplement, or I'll see an image of dates. Maybe this person needs to eat more dates, or whatever it is. Okay. But those three things put together, I just have a knowing without getting into my mind of trying to play charades or interpreting what it means. Okay. So when you are trying to strengthen your claircognizance, the best way to do it is to actually just start talking. Okay. Claircognizance, I want you to think of it as like a funnel that's sitting on the top of your head, and information is being dropped into you and it's going into your mind and right out your mouth without giving it a chance to think about it. So if you're seeing images in your mind, or you're hearing images in your head, or you're feeling physical sensations and you're not sure what any of them means, in order to flex your claircognizance, what you need to actually start doing is start talking and quite literally describing exactly what you're seeing, hearing, or feeling. And as you do that, similar to in automatic writing, the idea of like turning on a dirty faucet, at first it's going to be unclear why you're saying those things, but eventually the messages run clear. The guide will speak through you and use you as a mouthpiece. So when I am unsure of the information that is coming through me, right? I see something, I hear something, and I feel something, but I don't know what any of those things mean. I will quite literally just start talking and describing what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a bowl, I'm seeing some spinach being put into a blender, and I'm hearing the word strength, and I don't know what this means. And as I'm talking, all of a sudden I'll go, oh, it means that you're low in iron. Because suddenly the guide will just talk through me. And this is why claircognizance is such a beautiful, beautiful Clair to have. It is literally you being the mouthpiece for your guide. Your guide is using your mouth to speak out loud and speak through you. And so you have to just start by letting the dirty faucet run with the dirty water coming out first, and start talking. And whatever's in your mind at first, the dirty stuff will come out, right? Your own thoughts will come out first, but eventually the guide will speak through you and take over. And so this is such a beautiful one, and it's a great way to kind of bring them all together. It's a great way to bring all of your guide's messages together without having to sit there and analyze and interpret, because otherwise you're trying to put puzzle pieces together, and this is where we can get caught in misinterpretation. So that's where claircognizance really comes in handy, is then you just start speaking and it comes through you. Okay. Other ways that you can work on strengthening your claircognizance is through automatic writing. So this could be asking your spirit guide out loud, spirit guide, please channel through me as I write. Guys, I still use this all the time. I'll get centered, get grounded, call my guide, spirit guide, please channel through me as I write. And then I'll write a sentence at the top of a page. Okay. Or a question, sorry, at the top of a page. And then I'll just start writing. And same thing. At first, it will be my own thoughts, right? I don't know what to do about this. I'm not sure. I think maybe this. And then all of a sudden, the spirit will take over. They'll write for me, and I will feel the pen pick up. I will suddenly write so fast and so sloppy that it's almost illegible, but the messages are just coming through, right? The guide is channeling through me. Claircognizance is a knowing, but it's also the guide taking over your body and writing for you, or speaking for you and speaking through you. It's so powerful that, you feel it come through, and then all of a sudden it's like you drop the pen because they have nothing else to say. Okay. So automatic writing is one of the best ways to strengthen your claircognizance and receive really, really clear messages from your guides. Okay. Now, guys, this claircognizance, especially if you're predominantly claircognizant, comes through at its strongest when your body is relaxed, when you're not trying to resist your guide coming through you and working through you. So it is always going to come through clearest after you have done something to relax your physical body. Now, whether that is doing a meditation, I would actually argue that the easiest way to do that is to do something physical. Do some sort of physical exercise, whether that's do like a really intense workout, go for a run, go for a swim, go for a walk, whatever it is. Do something to keep your body occupied so that the guide can take over and your mind can kind of be free and move out of the way. You've really got to get out of your head and into your body to strengthen your claircognizance. So I love to do automatic writing right after I've just worked out. I've worked up a nice, good sweat, and then I'll run into my office and go sit down and call my guides and start to channel as I write. And boy, do I never get any clearer messages than at that point. Okay. Guys, when I do the energy forecasts, there's one of the reasons I chose not to put it on YouTube was because usually I'm like dripping sweat and in my workout clothes. I will do a workout first, then call in the guides and ask the guides to channel through me and speak through me. Okay. And it's really, really so powerful because they're not even my words and there's no thoughts being processed in the moment, right? I'm not hearing them first and then speaking, right? I'm not translating. I'm just letting the guide take over and use my voice as a megaphone. And that's really the beauty of claircognizance. So the best thing that you can do is really get your body moving on autopilot, go for a walk and let your mind wander. Ask your guide, go on a walk with an intention of getting a very specific question answered. Spirit guide, as I go on this walk today, I need the answer to this question. Then just go for a walk, get your body moving, maybe go for a run and see what downloads just drop through you. And then definitely you're going to want to capture it because sometimes when claircognizance comes through, those knowings hit you, they're going to light you up like a circuit board or like a lightning board. It's going to be so fast, so furious, so exciting that it'll all come out of you. You'll either say it really quickly or write it down really quickly, and you'll forget it afterwards. So it's helpful that if you're doing it on your own to use a voice note recorder, record what comes through you in that moment because you're going to forget it afterwards because you didn't think of it, right? It came through you. So definitely use some sort of voice notes or something if you're going to do it that way, especially if you're out in nature, you don't have a pen handy. Okay, so those are all of my tips and tricks for help strengthening some of the main clairs or the strongest or the clairs that most people tend to typically have as their strongest clair. I hope that they've helped you. I'm not going to go back over all of them because it was a lot of different tips, but I hope it's been helpful and I hope you can try some of these. Remember just to try and strengthen one clair at a time and layer on the other ones as you go along. But remember also that in any conversation, all of our senses are at play. And so it's impossible to sort of only have a conversation where one clair is isolated. You're going to be receiving all of them at the same time anyway. It's just a matter of which one are you focusing on in that moment. So I hope that's helpful. Now, before we go, I did promise that we were going to do one quick intuitive development exercise. So I'm going to offer one quick Clairaudience exercise for you to try right now. And the answer is going to be in your show notes. So I want you guys to join me for a second. And we're going to take a few deep breaths together in through your nose and filling your belly. And then out through your mouth with a deep, powerful sigh. So deep breath in and let it go. Relaxing your chest and deep breath in and let it go. Dropping your shoulders and one more deep breath in and let it go. And dropping everything down. And then I'm going to take a quick moment to call in all of our spirit guides, loved ones, ascended masters, angels, archangels, and all other beautiful, benevolent beings of light who walk with us to come and join us in this little exercise today. I'm going to ask the guides to strengthen and reactivate your clairaudient or hearing gifts so that you may hear either a yes or a no answer to the question I'm about to ask. And I want you to take a quick moment to see a spirit guide come through. Now, this guide is going to be a guide for me. I'm going to ask to answer a question for me personally about my own past to see if you get a yes or a no. So I want you to picture perhaps what my guide looks like in this moment. Imagine what this guide looks like. Are they male or female? What energy or aura do you see around them? Try and strengthen that clairvoyance for a moment, or just play make believe in your mind for a moment. Take a moment to connect with the figure or the being or the energy that comes through when you call in my spirit guide, Jessica's spirit guide coming through. Now I'm going to ask a personal question of something that has already happened in my life, and I just want you to see if you hear a yes or a no at the back of your mind. Here's the question. Was I a ballet dancer in high school and growing up? Was I, Jessica, a ballet dancer in high school? See if you hear a yes or a no. See if you see the guide nodding yes or shaking their head no. Was I a ballet dancer in high school? If you see the answer or heard the answer, don't forget to thank the guide. Thank you, I hear you. And take a deep breath to let them go. Deep breath in and release. Beautiful. Come back to the room when you're ready. And answer for this question, guys, is in the show notes. So if you're wanting to see if you got the answer right or wrong, definitely check out the answer in the show notes with some few added details about it. I hope you got the answer right, and definitely send me a message or a DM on Instagram or send me an email if you got the answer right. Now, I'm so excited for you guys to give all of these exercises a try. And the last thing I do want to say is that as you are trying to strengthen the other clairs or any one of your clairs, just try not to get too frustrated, okay? Be brave enough to try it and be brave enough to share what you receive with other people, because again, the best way to strengthen any clair is to build up the trust muscle, is to receive confirmation from somebody else that the message that came through actually resonated or that they saw the same thing too, okay? So build up that trust muscle, and the more that you do, the more that you're going to start to trust yourself and the messages that come through. Remember that it's not about interpreting so much or kind of trying to decipher messages so much as it is of trusting yourself and what you know to be true in that moment. So I hope this episode was helpful for you. Again, if you have any questions about anything I chatted about or shared with you on today's episode, I'm always happy to help you. So you can always send me a DM. But of course, the easiest way to access me and get weekly coaching is in the Intuition Activation community. So don't forget to head over to the link in the show notes to come and sign up for that. And we can practice all of these things together. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode. Have a beautiful rest of the weekend. Love you guys. Mwah.